I've been living in the UK for about a year and a half now, and let me tell you, some of the slang here completely threw me off at first. Even though we speak the same language, as an American coming over to the UK for a visit or to live, I'm sure there are words or phrases that will confuse you. Even something as small as the typical greeting here versus the US. Back home, we'd normally say, hey, how are you? And you'd respond, good, how are you, right? Well, here the typical greeting is, hiya, you all right? And still to this day, I don't know how to respond. I'm like, yeah, I'm all right. Are you all right? It makes me feel like I don't look like I'm all right. So just little things like that. I do have to admit I had a little bit of a head start on this because my dad is British. So I grew up hearing some of this stuff, but definitely not all of it. So there was still a learning curve for me when I first moved here. So I decided to compile a list of 20 British slang words that either confused me when I first moved here or just commonly confuse many Americans in the first place. First is knackered. Like, I'm absolutely knackered after work. Hopefully from that sentence you can use context clues to figure out that it means exhausted. I think it confuses a lot of Americans because it sounds like a tool or like machinery might be broken, but like I said, it actually just means that you're really tired, whereas back in the States, we'd just say I'm exhausted or I'm really tired. Next is chuffed, like I'm chuffed to bits about my promotion. This one really confused me when I first moved here because it kind of sounds like chafed and kind of sounds like an insult, not something positive, but in reality it means really pleased or really happy. Next is gutted, and this one especially I feel like it sounds so funny in American accent, like you need that British like sound, like gutted, to sound proper. I can't even do it right, but an example is like I was gutted when my team lost the match, so it basically just means very disappointed, and to me it sounds extremely graphic, like someone's injured, like I'm actually picturing a body being gutted or something disgusting, but no, it just means that they're really upset. I think in the US we just say I'm upset or I'm pissed, which actually means something very different here, but I'll get to that in a little bit. This next one is one of my absolute favorite words, and I wish I had a British accent so I could do it justice, but cheeky, like fancy a cheeky pint after work. So cheeky means like mischievous, but in like a playful way. And I should also explain fancy in this sentence because here it means do you want to, like fancy going to the market, aka do you want to go to the market? But anyways, back to cheeky. I feel like it confuses Americans because it could be interpreted as rude, but I've never heard it used like that here. I've only ever heard it used affectionately to describe something done spontaneously or for fun, and I honestly don't even know if we have something similar to this in the States. If you can think of one, let me know in the comments. Next one that I don't hear as often as some of the others on the list, but when I first heard it, I was super confused. Faff. To me, and probably most Americans, it sounds like nonsense or gibberish, but it's referring to someone being unproductive. Like, stop faffing around and get to work. So I guess similar to us saying the F word in the States, or in a nicer way, stop messing around. The next one is pretty common in British movies, and I feel like it's a common one that Americans say when they're imitating British accents. Bollocks. A British synonym would be like rubbish, whereas in the States we'd probably say BS, or the longer version of that. Or if you wanted to be nicer, you'd say nonsense. Bollocks just sounds harsher and cruder to me, but in the UK it's often used like very casually in conversation. Next we have dodgy, which means suspicious or unreliable, like that neighborhood looks a bit dodgy. It's definitely not something we'd say in the US. It honestly sounds like dodgeball, or you'd think the literal definition for dodge, which is like to avoid something. But again, here it means something feels unsafe or shady. So some synonyms used in the States would probably be sketchy or shady. So remember earlier when I said pissed means something different here, not necessarily angry? One of the most common phrases you'll hear in the UK is take the piss, which means to mock or make fun of someone. Like you'd ask, are you taking the piss? To ask someone if they're joking, or you'd say, don't worry, I'm just taking the piss if you're telling someone that you're joking, which to us, we'd most likely interpret that quite literally and be super confused. And what makes this even more confusing is that the word piss is actually used for a lot of different things here, where again in the States it's pretty much just used for being really angry. Here it's used to describe someone who's extremely drunk. Oh, he was pissed last night, meaning he was super drunk last night, not super angry. It's used to describe extremely hard rainfall. It was pissing down all day yesterday. You can tell someone to piss off, which quite literally means to F off or to get lost. To piss around means to waste your time, which is similar to piss away, which also means means wasting, like I can't believe you pissed away all that money. So yeah, there are tons of ways to use the word piss in different ways here, so try not to get confused. Next we have a fun one, minted, which I'm sure as an American you can't even guess what that word would mean. In America, I feel like we only use the word mint to describe something that's actually mint flavored, or to say something is in mint condition, like the best condition. But here the word minted is used to describe someone who is super rich. Like he's absolutely minted. I have honestly no idea the origin of that, but I think it's a fun way to describe someone with a lot of money. Next we have a phrase that I've found myself saying more and more of since moving here, bits and bobs. Like I'm just picking up some bits and bobs from the shop. So it's basically a fun way of saying some odds and end or just some miscellaneous things. In the States, we'd probably just say, I'm gonna go grab some things from the store, but this phrase is just more fun. This one you probably know because of a famous food dish, but I bring it up for an important reason, chips, which like I mentioned, I'm sure you know because of the famous British dish, fish and chips. Here in the UK, they call what we would think of as fries chips, and what we would think of as chips, crisps. So I bring this up so you don't get confused when you're ordering anything other than fish and chips, so you make sure that you know what you're ordering. Next is another food item that I'm mentioning simply so you don't order the wrong thing or get confused when you're here, biscuit. When they say biscuit here in the US, they mean like a really hard cookie. The biscuits that we typically think of, like the fluffy, baked, buttery, those just don't exist here. So if someone offers you a biscuit, they're offering you a really hard cookie, typically served with tea. I'm actually not sure what they would call a soft cookie here, like a chocolate chip cookie or something that's like super gooey and not hard. Maybe it's just cookie, let me know in the comments. Next we have Brolly, which is just a cute sounding abbreviated word for umbrella. As far as I know, we don't really have anything similar in the States, we just say umbrella. Next is zonked, like I was zonked after that workout, which basically just means completely exhausted. To me, this just sounds like something Scooby-Doo would say or something, so I always find it funny when I hear it. The next one you might know if you're a Taylor Swift fan because of her latest album, but Fortnight, which means 2 weeks. I don't think this one is actually confusing, but it's just not a term that we really use at all in the States. We'd simply just say every 2 weeks rather than every fortnight. Next we have the loo, which I'm sure most of you know because of the movies. It means toilet, and it's funny because in the States we would typically just say bathroom or restroom. In Europe they say WC or toilet, and here they say the loo. So it's funny that even in the same language we all call it something different. The next one is something you'd probably hear in a shop or something on a visit to the UK, quid, which is slang for the British pound, the currency here in the UK. It's similar to saying $5 instead of saying $5, which is the official name for US currency. So if you ever hear someone say that's 20 quid, they just mean that that's 20 British pounds. Next we have bloke, like he's a decent bloke, which is just another word for man or guy. I guess similar to us saying dude, or in Ireland they say lad. Next is telly, which you could probably figure out if I gave you a sentence. What's on the telly tonight? It's a nickname for television, like how in the States we say TV. It's more common to hear telly rather than TV out here. And last but certainly not least, I'm going to end with a word I heard recently and was so confused by. I thought after 1.5 years of living here I'd heard all the slang words and had them all down, but apparently not. Chinwag. Like we had a lovely chinwag over tea. Can you guess what that means based on what I just said? I couldn't. It simply just means like a chat or a conversation. It's a playful phrase that sounds more like it refers to a physical action of moving your chin, but yeah, it's just a fun way to say chat. So apparently even after 1.5 years of living here, and of course growing up with English as my native language and a British father, I'm still hearing British slang words and phrases that confuse me. Words that literally leave me thinking, what the hell does that mean? And then Googling it later to find out. So please, if you've ever been to the UK or even just had a chat with a Brit, please share your favorite British slang or moments when you were confused by British slang. I'd love to hear them. And also throw in the comments if you'd like to see a part 2 or more reaction videos on British culture as an American living here abroad. For now, let's take a look at some culture shocks I had when I first moved here.